I can't remember. Endless Deaths maybe is what it says, but
no, Endless Loadouts. Unlimited
There's actually some
Deaths.
really nice Unlimited Deaths.
Yeah.
There you go.
You might think that I should know because I watched this trailer for so long.
I'm questioning your devotion to the trailer that you've been proclaiming.
Hey Troupe, it is such a pleasure to have you again.
It's a pleasure to be here.
It's kind of 6 months ago that we had our last session.
Yeah, maybe even longer.
And I think you have been quite busy.
I have been quite busy, yes. If it wasn't longer, then it just feels longer, given how much has happened since then.
I don't know if Joel or you, one of you mentioned in our last feedback session that it took 7 months or even longer to find the sonic and musical identity of Breaker. Can you elaborate a little bit on that process? Because it kind of struck me. It's quite a long time. So, you know, who's on the audio team and how are you working together? How are you influencing each other?
Yeah, well, the audio team is Alex Johnson, who is the audio lead, Akash, who you had on recently, as sound designer, and then Joel Korlitz and myself as composers. And so there's definitely quite a bit of collaboration, you know, among everyone on the audio team in terms of finding sounds, finding ways of working, plugins, techniques, all that kind of stuff. But I think that, you know, the music side is sort of twofold, right? You've got like the sort of the production, and then you've also got the composition. So specifically, Joel and I have been spending a lot of time essentially trying to find something that fits the world of Hyperlight, but isn't Hyperlight Drifter, you know, and I think that's the thing that's very difficult, and I think that's what makes a process like this more complicated than actually coming to something, you know, that's whole cloth, brand new. It's been a pretty extensive journey, and to be honest, now I would say it actually took us like a year to get to that spot, where only now do I really feel like I'm kind of hitting it and really nailing it, and I don't think we've really released actually any of the music that I think is really the kind of the sweet spot of what this game sounds like. So, you know, it's still a journey.
That's fascinating. So what you're telling me actually is kind of you had to learn like a new language, basically. And that's what took a year so that you feel fluent enough to be able to converse in it, so to speak.
Yeah, but I think that's a great analogy. We had to learn a new language, which is sort of the language of Hyperlight, and then write poetry in that language, right? Which is not something that you can learn a language. You know, I'm trying to learn Portuguese right now, and it's like I can get to a point where I can read a sentence, and I might be able to order something from a menu, but I can't, you know, just sit down and compose some beautiful, elegant poetry. I'm not going to write a love song or something in Portuguese. So I think, you know, it took a little bit of time for us to become fluent in that language, but then, okay, now what do we write? You know, now that we are fluent in that language, what is the poetry of this world as opposed to the poetry of Hyperlight Drifter?
How do you go about creating something? I'm a person that needs various inputs. I come up with this, I think, quite simple idea, and then I iterate on it. I'm honing in on the vision that I might have in my head. I love experimenting with plugins, sampler instruments, and then I turn knobs and see what happens if that takes me closer to the original vision. How's your process in that, in specifically with Hyperlight?
I think with this, Joel and I scored The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, which was a sort of goofy April Fool's game, but actually had a lot of music in it, and we did it pretty quickly. And that was very much just, I know Sonic the Hedgehog so intimately, I know that aesthetic, and it was, as you're describing, just it should just be this, and you just sit there and have to just put all the notes into the DAW, and you know, go through a few presets, and boom, like that's the sound. There it is. I think with Hyperlight, I think Rich's process, Disaster Piece on the original game, was much more exploratory. So I think by necessity, it takes time for us to sort of explore some nooks and crannies, like go down some pathways, maybe they're dead ends, maybe they lead to just one thing from that, that pathway that's useful, and then we kind of bring that back into that core path. I think it feels a lot more to me like sculpting or something, where you've got all this, the sounds that do fit into the Hyperlight world, and the sounds that don't fit, but you don't know necessarily how they can fit together to feel like Breaker. And I think that's been the biggest trick. And that does truly just take like, throw this into the DAW. No. Erase that. Throw this into the DAW. No. Erase that. Try this chord. Yeah, it sounds great. It's a good chord, but it doesn't have the mystery, or it doesn't maybe have the sort of complexity or the depth that you'd expect from Hyperlight.
It's more like the feelings that you try to put to paper, but you don't know exactly what music the feelings correspond to.
Exactly. Yeah. And the feelings are sort of so vague that there isn't an established vocabulary. You or I might know that we want to have a happy song, and so we're using major chords, and it's a sad song, we're using minor chords, or it's kind of dark, it's diminished. There's not really a vocabulary for, I think, the types of emotions that the Hyperlight series evokes. So it is basically a process that any composer on earth would have to sort of have that experimental, like, throw some things at the wall to see what sticks, because no one has ever defined those emotions in musical terms, I think.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of the trailer, I've heard it quite a lot of times, because when I recently moved and when I built the studio now here, I set up my speakers, I cabled the speakers, and your trailer just came out. And I listened to it and I thought that would be nice to listen to on my system. So the subwoofer was connected, etc. And I listened to it and I couldn't stop listening to it. I had it like on the 24/7 when I worked, when I did some Excel sheet stuff, when I did some writing stuff. I listened very deliberately. I listened on the side. Every time somebody came along, when we invited somebody and I showed my studio, I showed this track.
Nice. Love to hear that.
Because it has just everything in it. It sounds so powerful. It sounds very good in this room. But I heard from EE, which I think is a reliable source, that specifically this trailer was a very involved process. Can you a little bit go into what it took to create that trailer?
Yeah, where to begin? Yeah, this was definitely one that made it pretty high up in the alphabet in terms of revisions. Joel does like an A, B, C, D, E, F, G sort of system for his file names, and I think this one was approaching Z. So there were many back and forths, and he sort of had the core foundation. I did additional stuff, came in, did my own layers, did kind of a bridge section. We did a lot of mixing back and forth. Him and Alex did mixing sessions, Alex Preston, the director, where they sat, together virtually, but Joel had his DAW open and they went through track by track, and Alex said, oh, that's the thing that is kind of bothering me, or, I love that. Can we bring that up? So, almost like Joel is the mixer in a kind of traditional band setting, and then Alex Preston is the artist on the couch being like, okay, can we get more drums? Okay, I want to turn my guitar up. Hey, give me more vocal. So, that it was sort of similar, I guess, to the process we've been describing, which is that there's the production side, but there's also the composition side. The thing with trailers is there's the third component, which is there's this sort of narrative arc of the trailer and the way the trailer sells the game. And Alex really likes to work with the music as informing that aspect of it. It's not just, here's a trailer, put music on it, whatever. We actually had a lot of feedback back into the actual editing of the trailer and the construction of the shots, and we're making suggestions about, hey, musically, there's just no way we can elevate anymore unless we dip down and actually bring the energy down. Then we can come back in, and that'll be a lot more impactful. But I know that's not really the vibe you have in that section. Could you find some more mellow shots? And then we transition back into this thing. So there was a lot of that kind of just finding something that felt like it had impact, but also had that sort of mystery and the intrigue that the Hyperlight world, is known for. So it was very, very, very iterative.
Do you think after the fact that it was worth the effort? How was the response to the trailer from your perspective?
Actually, probably better than I expected. I feel like the issue with Heart Machine as a studio is that you have what I consider to be one of the most iconic trailers ever, which is the Hyperlight Drifter trailer that has Panacea, that beautiful kind of drifting piano track over it. And it's so different than what game trailers were at the time, what game trailers are today, a game trailer you'd expect for an action game. It was so different. And I think for this, we wanted to do something that was actually more straightforward, but going straight forward is really easy to lose your core audience that appreciated how different the studio is. And so that labor, I think, was to try to bring them along to say, like, this is big, this is powerful, this is impactful, but this is also a mysterious world. This is a world that has sounds you've never heard before. And it's a world that will give you that intensity that you do have in Hyperlight Drifter, even if we're, not using kind of the same tricks that were used in Hyperlight Drifter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not an apples to apples comparison, but I think it's kind of like the brief that Mick Gordon got, make some new music that millions of players love, but still goes to the core of the Doom fans, but create something totally new.
Yes. Yeah. It's sort of the most ridiculous thing that, and it does actually happen all the time, which is, make something that evokes the nostalgia and hits all the same emotional chords, but also is something that no one's ever heard before. And it's like, how do you find those? You can't use the same tricks. So what tricks are you using then to achieve the same effect? Like, how is that even possible? I think we did an okay job of it.
Yeah, but I really love that Alex also took kind of this control of the trailer, how to put it together. I was very impressed by an interview that I listened to with Mark Mangini, who said that on Dune they worked together very, very closely with the director. They really took the time to play. I think they even played some pieces of music on set so that the actors could get informed of the emotionality and what to feel and how dark or light a scene was. And I think this feedback loop is very, very important, so that the music is not slapped on at the end. As you said, here's the trailer, do the music. But if you can really iterate and the music and picture goes hand in hand, you get so much further than just slapping the music on. Yes,
it's probably multiplies the workload sort of exponentially as well.
I can imagine,
because you have more opportunities to make changes both forwards and backwards, both in the visuals and in the audio, but it gives you a result that feels completely different, in my opinion, than a trailer that is just, we licensed this track, we put it on there, there's no conversation. I think that conversation aspect opens up the potential for a lot of kind of extra work, but it almost unlocks a new caliber of final product,
I think so. And my personal opinion is that it really shows in what you have achieved. I'm now really excited to show you our challenge entries. We have 5 brave composers who attacked this challenge head on. I think it was a little bit of a daunting task because what we just talked about, the trailer music was so good that you really had to enter the cave of the dragon and dare to produce your own thing. But this is that the Still Alive community is about. You just can try and experiment without consequence, even if it's a very high bar. You don't have to hit it. It's just for your personal getting better, training, doing something that you like and experiment. As with Akash last week, he promised some merchandise of Heart Machine, which everybody's very keen on. So you have to pick a winner in the end. And
Oh,
yeah, I don't know if I put you on the spot here, but we will see.
okay.
So let's jump into our first entry. Daniel, Affordable Nature. And that was the entry from Daniel.
Awesome. Great work, Daniel. I'm going to applaud for each one since everyone put the effort in and did great work. Love that mood. I think, as you said, it's really interesting to see what is evoked. And I think this piece captures sort of just the overall mood of the trailer in a really cool way, which is that sense of it's almost like a little bit hypnotic. I think that despite the fact that we're highlighting all these different things in the trailer, the environments and the loadout and the, attacks and all the enemies and all those things, you still, a roguelike game has a sort of repetitive structure. It sort of is like it's a repetitive structure with variety. And I think this piece does a really nice job of kind of capturing that sense. I think the intro works really nicely. I think as you start to get into the more expansive environments, I would love to hear some reverb, maybe some big, like, just pad, like chords, big just hits of like scale, infinite open worlds, just getting that kind of, just that sense of expanse. And I don't think you necessarily need to move away from the core sort of more arpeggiated synth texture, but I think adding that layer on top could be nice. Of course, you could kind of, maybe as you get into the bosses and the deaths, maybe bring in some idea of percussion there to kind of like, add a little bit of threat there. I mean, I think it'd be a really interesting experiment to try to keep this core and not really deviate from it, but just sort of add layers that emphasize each section. And then I think, the very end, the title reveal, I think could have a great moment there where you just really open up, huge kind of chord, and then kind of bring those synths kind of back in. Like, I think that could be a really cool, you got this really kind of consistent pulse, and then you just boom, you let people kind of bask in that moment. And then early access, fall 2023, the synths kind of come back in, and you get people excited to kind of get into that mindset themselves, or get into that rhythm.
This is really like a trailer that brings you forward. It's like a journey in itself. So you pack your backpack, you jump into this open, vast world and explore. So then let's look at Aza's entry. so cool.
All
The
right.
change in tone was unexpected. It took it to the next level with the action. Really cool, Asa. So, what are your thoughts, Troupe?
Absolutely. Yes, obviously this is sort of the opposite, where it's really highlighting the different moments. It's highlighting sort of the same breakdown that we is actually, that's one of the examples of something we pushed for, when you've got the character that sort of walks away from the camera in this big kind of vast environment. Things kind of slow down, and it's really cool to see that same sort of structure here. Obviously, some truly epic drum programming and kind of hard style vibes going on when you get to the more expansive zone. And I actually really love the mystery in this one. Obviously, it's easy to kind of plug into the big moments, but I actually think the beginning with the kind of the mystery of it is really nice. It draws me in a way that, I think our version actually doesn't even do. Like, our version is really trying to hit you in the beginning with, like, this is a Heart Machine game. Like, check this out. And it's fun, maybe just because I'm so used to that version, to see something that is a little bit more subdued in the beginning, and kind of makes you think, ooh, wait, what is this game? Like, what's going on here? I mean, I think the thing that I would tie this all together is maybe bringing some of that mystery vibe from the beginning into these harder elements, and also potentially even bringing some of the melodic ideas or rhythmic ideas from these later sections into earlier sections, maybe in a different arrangement. Maybe it's sort of the rhythm of the drums, but on a melodic instrument, or something in that kind of similar vein. Like, basically just trying to make each segment feel like it's being hinted at. There's some foreshadowing between these kind of different modes, because I think everything that's there is like nailing the moods, but the trailer has a lot of different moods, right? And so you want to try to find those threads to tie everything together, so that it all feels like it's honoring the journey that you're going on, but it's all part of that same journey. And the sounds and everything are great, and sort of are definitely living in the same world. But I think there's moments where I'd love to hear a continuation of the different ideas, but then with new ideas kind of layered on top of it.
Really cool, Asa. Thank you very much for your entry. Let's go to our third one, which is from Harvey. That was a nice moment of suspense there. Before the logo hit.
Oh my
I thought,
God.
Is it finished? Is it finished? And then bam. That was,
that one gets surprising. Full marks just for re-editing the entire trailer.
Yeah.
And doing a pretty great job.
I noticed that wasn't the first shot. So what's going on?
I think there was like some additional stuff, like some slow motion that was going on. I think there's some stuff that's cut out, which is really cool, because basically this was the process that we had, where we sort of actually had the ability to request changes to the edit and kind of change the vibe and the dynamic. And so it's really cool to see. I mean, I think this is more succinct possibly than our trailer. I think it has less of the different things that we were trying to highlight, maybe as skipping over some of the the different features and things like that. But it's really cool to see a structure that feels like this is basically trying to do something new as you said, the suspense, the fact that the end is almost more sound design than it is music, and it's really great sound design like that. The logo reveal is like that. It's perfectly kind of synced up to all the action, all the moments. It feels like that's giving me a lot of the texture of the world, and like and the aesthetic of the game. I almost wish that aesthetic was even carried into some of the music. Earlier in the track, like some of that texture and the glitchiness and that kind of stuff, I think is really nice. And the production here is great, obviously. And in the beginning, you've got the nice little warble on the piano, some tape emulation. That's definitely in the world that we were, playing with. I think really nice aesthetics, nice editing. I think kind of bringing maybe some. It's kind of the same comment. What tends to happen, which is like, especially when you don't have as much time to polish, each of those individual elements like feels really good on their own, but there's probably stuff you could pull into the rest of the track from each of those moments. So I think, some of the synth work would be really nice in the beginning to kind of help flesh out that piano world, some of those glitchy sounds. I think as you get into the more, like chill wave, just banging like straight ahead stuff, potentially bringing in some of the piano to add some melodic content in there and like, try to tug at something a little emotional, bits and pieces, I think would be really nice. And then at the end, I think the sound design, everything that's there is amazing, but I wouldn't mind finding some chord to land on, Hyperlight Breaker, like, in addition to that really cool textural stuff, like or maybe it's something ghostly, maybe it's like musically is actually kind of floating back here and it's verbed out and you're emphasizing the sound design, but you've got that little hint of like, oh, this world is, not exactly what you expect it to be.
The piano was maybe a little bit too calm even, and then you thought, well, is there something coming? And then kind of this really cool shot with these, what are those called, Troupe?
Characters.
No, they're not the characters, the surfboards.
Hoverboards. Yeah.
The hoverboards. Yeah, so the three characters on the hover characters.
I think I can say they're called hoverboards.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. So this change really was powerful. That was really
that's a great moment, and
cool moment.
Landing on that, that sort of slower shot, and then that's such a shift. Like, oh, the characters are cruising, the speed is picking up, and it's really the sort of the arc of this one, definitely really works.
It's really not easy listening to something once and then memorizing all the things that you want to talk about, because there's always something that is shifting in your head and in your mind. So you see a new element, and this has a relation to the music that you heard before, and it's not easy making these connections and making a coherent picture in your head of what you want to talk about and critique. It's absolutely not easy to keeping all that in your head and then making coherent sentences about it. When I have to mark the works of my students, I like it that this is offline, so I can listen to it, I can make up my mind, I can rewind, listen to it again, think about it, put it in context of the whole class. I think this is so important. If you want to mark something, you have to have some context. You can't mark anything in a vacuum. You don't know, is this good, is this bad, what is this? You need to have some frame of reference, I think.
I'm very lucky that I spent a lot of years in recording studios, working on music,
as you say, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, as both as a musician and then also as a producer, and so I think that sense of like time is money. You're like, well, it's $1,000 an hour for you to have these opinions. So these opinions need to be things that you can come to very quickly. I think that has served me really well in the context of being a lead or giving feedback, because I'm forming those opinions every second that I'm watching anything. Of course, it makes it really hard to appreciate any sort of video game or media of any kind, because I'm constantly critiquing it as it's happening. But it's very useful professionally, if it's not so useful personally.
Yeah. So the experience is what you compare something against. Okay, thank you, Harvey. Thank you very much for your entry. And now we come to the next one, second to last. It's Julian, you're here as well. Let's listen to Julian's entry.
All right. Excellent.
Excellent job. Julian, could you write in the chat how long it took you to do this? I feel you spent a lot of time looking for these transitions to the next scene, dipping down into a calmer part, coming up again, and then having something that's heavy hitting. And I really liked the contrast that I saw with Harvey. He emphasized the hoverboard scene. This is where his beat started. And this is exactly the opposite with Julian, where he actually went into a calmer part. And I totally agree with Adam. This sounds like almost like a Bond theme.
Yeah.
That was so cool.
Yeah. It's very, this is a very confident, presentation of this. And yeah, I noticed even some just little kind of light synth hits on just, cuts, like not actually big transitions, like changes, but just emphasizing the cuts. It seems like maybe you actually just went in and used our exact tempo, which is a smart move to, be able to sync these things like on the beat. I mean, this feels like a trailer that could exist, right? It's obviously, and it seems you put quite a bit of work into it, Julian, which I applaud you for. I think, the main thing is sort of just as people are saying, that sort of the energy of like the James Bond. It has this sort of like cool aspect to it, and I think it totally works, and it sounds amazing, and the production's really great. Like all the synths, and there's little kind of things like twisting out into the distance, and it feels like it kind of is acknowledging the hyperlight universe, and also kind of what the original trailer did. And I think the main thing for me is just finding that mysterious kind of emotional component, and maybe playing with some of the places that you can go before and after the really confident like combat sections where you're like, this is badass, right? Like there's a moment where the characters are just badass, and there's really no need or reason to make that more complicated than it needs to be. But there's also moments where you're talking about, the world, you're sort of emphasizing some of the mysteries of the world, especially at the beginning. You're kind of looking at this space that, is it science fiction? Is it fantasy? Is it, like, what is this? It's kind of ruined, but it's technologically advanced. And I think what I would love to hear is just some musical explorations of, something a little bit not right, or something's a little bit mysterious, I don't quite know, so that those moments of confidence feel really like, bam, like really that's a shift, and that's a change.
He says it took him 2 weeks in total working on it, on and off. That's our answer.
It took us about 3 months or something working on it constantly. I can't remember how long exactly we were on this one, but it was many more iterations than anyone here could possibly ever afford to do. So, all of this is with the full knowledge that, if everyone was getting paid to work on this trailer and it was their job, they would be able to do tons more little details and nuances and, go find those, just try to sit there for 3 hours and like try different chords, that's stuff that is kind of, we have the privilege to do as the professionals that get to work on the thing itself. So, amazing work. Everybody that, has been able to do this kind of in their free time. It's really an achievement. So great job, everybody.
Let's get to our last one. Maggie Evans also has an entry. Let's listen. Very beautiful. Cool, chill vibes for that open world feeling.
Exactly right. I think very similar to the first that we heard, really emphasizing that sort of just rhythm and the sort of core gameplay loop, which is really nice. But obviously this one does have the percussion, sort of leans into, some more directions. I think probably something similar applies where, the energy, the aggression, the sort of like infinite death, I can't remember, endless deaths maybe is what it says, but
I think it's endless deaths, yeah. Infinite loadouts.
Endless
loadouts.
Unlimited deaths. Yeah. There you go.
You might think that I should know because I watched this trailer for so long, but I just listened to the music and the sound. Sorry,
I'm questioning your devotion to the trailer that you've been proclaiming. But yeah, I think it's like this. The arrangement on this one is also really nice. I noticed there was like a bar of two somewhere where, oops, I'm kind of I want to like get my downbeat on the actual title card. So there's just a bar of two. And then it kind of starts over. Like that's really a nice touch. Like there's really nice touches to the arrangement here, where it all kind of feels like cohesive. And I think probably it is kind of funny that my comments are always like it's too cohesive or it's not cohesive enough. But that's really the challenge, right? When you're doing a trailer, I think that's the absolute hardest. And for Joel and I did basically a bridge section for this. So it's my music in the existing music that he had. And so then what we did is I also contributed sort of additional synths and, little bits of production for the rest of the track so that the bridge would feel like it had grounding in the rest of the track. And then he did additional stuff on the bridge so that it would kind of feel grounded. And even though it's two different composers, I think the same principle applies here where you've got this really cool groove. Obviously the beginning is amazing, like feels great. It's really kind of dreamlike. But then you do want to end up in that sort of endless deaths section, right? It's like you want to end up with
more action-y,
some action, some heaviness. And so the question is like, you come in, how do you make that section still capture that sort of that loop, that flow state that we've talked about, but then also have the earlier sections like have just little hints of that energy bubbling on the surface. Maybe there's some sense that kind of just
foreboding what's going to happen.
Just, and they're still pretty, but maybe they're a little bit distorted, or they're kind of like there's something uncertain or uneasy about them. They're like toony or whatever it is about them. And I think this foundation is amazing. And with some of that, like that extra sense of unease, that extra sense of scope and kind of expansiveness, could basically hit all the notes that are here. And I don't think the structure really needs to change at all. And I would, I think I've maybe made this note a couple times that on the title, like it's cool to kind of carry that mood through, but I think I would hit the title, boom, then bring the good thing kind of comes back in, and it really, there's something really, I know it's kind of cheesy to be like, oh, Hyperlight Breaker, and then kind of bring your music back in, but it's actually really effective. Like I think there's a reason why that's such a common
it's
idea.
Continuing kind of, this is not the end. Bam, this is the game. Now dive in and create your own stories. It takes you further on that journey. I think that's why it's so effective.
Remember, people, the most important thing is what's on the screen right now. Hyperlight Breaker. We're trying to sell that product. Despite the fact that we're trying to make a piece of art and we're not thinking about that at all, right? In the process of working on this trailer, but ultimately, that moment is the most important moment in the entire trailer. And so building something really kind of consistent and cool and dreamlike, and then saying like, but this is the, remember Hyperlight Breaker, keep that in your mind. And then going back to the dream is like a really powerful tool, I think, to keep the viewer both engaged with all that content they just saw, but also really feeling like, wow, Hyperlight Breaker, the word Hyperlight Breaker was the coolest moment of the entire trailer, the most contrast, the most interest, of the whole trailer. But I think overall structure of this, that's probably the only structural change I would make. And I think everything else is just sort of about kind of bringing in those sonic elements, and maybe harmonically moving a little bit darker here in the sort of endless deaths, or unlimited deaths section. Endless loadouts, unlimited.
Yeah, we should both go back and look at the trailer a few more times, I think, because clearly,
I don't. That copy, in my defense, that copy was changing constantly as we were working on it. So I am like, doesn't it say? Don't we have a whole section that I'm missing here? And like, no, we cut that. It's. There's
I don't have
a lot
that excuse.
Well, you have the excuse of not having spent 3 months working on it at the very least. So I think we're both excused in this case. But
nice.
I think great work on this. As always, and I really love just hearing everyone's approaches and hearing their sounds. Just hearing what kind of like textures and melodies and stuff people bring to this world.
Yeah, because there are 1,000 ways you could take this. That evoke different emotions and states. You have found one that works super well, but I always love how listening to the same clips back to back always gives you some inspiration. This is also an avenue you could go down, and if you polish it to something to a trailer state, it could sound absolutely amazing with a different idea, and this is what's so really cool about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think our process is almost to just create all of these different versions kind of either in our minds or actually try different things and then take the stuff that works best and create a trailer that sort of has elements of all of these. That was really our goal, was to have that sort of dreamlike state. Oh, but we want this energy. Oh, we want this thing that kind of like, we call it Mickey Mousing, where you really like hit every kind of moment, and you spike it with a big drum hit or a change or whatever.
Is that an established technical term, Mickey Mousing?
Mickey Mousing. Yeah, it's a film term. But yeah, basically, if you think about like really old Mickey Mouse cartoons, every step is like, and it's basically, Mickey Mousing is sort of like how, and we talk about it actually when we're doing the implementation of the music in the game. How Mickey Mouse do we want this to feel? Like when the player swings their sword, are we like dun 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 dun, or are we sort of backing off and saying like swinging your sword is no big deal? It's when you fight a boss that's a big deal, or a mini boss, or it's when you like activate some important thing. Are we Mickey Mousing every single event that happens, or are we sort of laying back? And I think the same is basically this trailer presents the same puzzle that we had. That we have been working on in the game itself, which is just, it's not it's not going to work in a game that is sort of about seamless exploration and combat. It's not going to work to just constantly be shifting, between, it's big and scary and it's mellow and vibey.
Totally.
It's like it kind of needs to be mellow and vibey, and then with a threat of big scariness, and then only in certain circumstances do you really go down that heavier path. So it's basically, this is the problem with the game, right? And it's not a problem in the ultimate, shipped game, but it's a problem that we have to solve as composers.
Yeah.
Is just how do we react appropriately to each thing that's happening. So I think that's, most of my feedback, I would say, today has been sort of about how do you react to the changes that are happening. I feel pretty strongly that you should react. You should Mickey Mouse the title card. I feel not so strongly about basically any of the other kind of moments, but then I feel strongly that segments should have some shift so that you're kind of informing the player or the listener. This is about combat. This is about death. This is about open worlds. Like I want to be able to imagine as I'm listening to this with my eyes closed that I'm in an expansive space. There's reverb. There's big, like long chords.
Yeah.
Then I want to be able to imagine that it's about endless deaths. Ooh, wow. That's kind of grinding and heavy like that. I think that's kind of the core piece of feedback that I have is close your eyes and see how well this kind of tracks in the macro scale what's happening in the trailer.
Really nice. It's so interesting listening to the process and all the thought that has been put into it. 3 months, you say. You and Joel, who we had on a feedback session as well. I mean, truly two people who have so much experience. Could have been easy, but the result is really something to show.
It's never, I think, it's never easy. And I think Heart Machine, part of the reason that we both like working with Heart Machine is that they're striving for something that is just different and new and, hitting emotional targets that are not typical emotional targets, hitting aesthetic targets that are not typical aesthetic targets. And so as composers that, really enjoy kind of pushing the boundaries and aesthetically and harmonically and everything, I think we just really like to kind of sink our teeth into it. It can be certainly pretty frustrating to work on one trailer for 3 months or however long we were working on it and do all those iterations. But, it is a task that I think is ultimately far more satisfying for us than to just sit down and say, okay, I did this in a day and that's, is that what you wanted? If it is, okay, well, done,
Really nice. Yeah. So, ready to pick your personal favorite?
I think I can pick the favorite for me personally. And I think it's because purely just the level of detail and sort of completeness compared to, the other entries, which I think all have delivered, great music, great sounds, cool ideas. But I'm going to say that Julian just executed the most kind of complete vision that I think would, I could get something if I was the audio lead, if I was directing this, I could get to something that felt like in that world relatively quickly from there. So I think that's a really impressive job.
Nice. Well done, Julian. Congrats. Really cool. So thanks again, Julian, for your entry. Thank you, everybody, for your entry. Troupe, where does the music lead you now to within Heart Machine? What's your next kind of assignment there?
We have actually just kind of wrapped up a pretty big overhaul of the music system, which we'll probably talk about at some point. Maybe we can, put together a feature at some point about kind of what we decided we needed to do to achieve what I was mentioning with the Mickey Mouse balance.
Okay.
And so we did a lot of technical work. Mickey Mouse balance is something I'm definitely just switching into the lexicon now. We did a lot of technical work, and we worked with Alex Johnson, our audio lead, to sort of build essentially a set of systems so that we could deliver really good just pieces of music, but also deliver something that was reactive and dynamic and sort of semi-procedural to match the open world and roguelike structure. It's been a lot of work, and now it's really exciting because we're just kind of composing. It's just really at this point, like, we just need to make a lot of music. So yeah, I'm really excited about where we're at with it. And, excited for people to actually be able to play the game sooner than later. We're definitely, in the home stretch.
Troupe, thank you very, very much for your time. It's been a treat. Where can people find you online? Do you want to plug any of your online presences?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just at Troupe Gammage, which you can kind of, believe, see below my name here on, Twitter and Instagram. Oh, yes, what a legend. And my website is troupegammage.com. It's just all that, basically.
It would be really fun to have you on again at some point. Maybe talk about the music system. That would be something that very much interests us. Looking behind the scenes and stuff. I don't know if you want to take it to a GDC talk or come to us or both.
It might be all of the above.
Either GDC or us. Yeah. It's, Troupe, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, E, for putting it all together again. And I guess we will see you at some other point.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody who contributed and everybody who was hanging out.
Yep.
Really appreciate it.
Great. Then, see you. Bye-bye.
See ya.
This is usually the point where I realize that I haven't recorded anything.